Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a conversation, starting to speak your truth, only to realize halfway through that no one is really listening? Maybe your words trail off, maybe someone changes the subject, or maybe there's just that heavy silence, the kind that says, "I don't know what to do with this." And you're left sitting with a strange feeling. Not regret, not exactly sadness, but something quieter. Like your truth just slipped through the cracks. If you're over 60, I'd bet this isn't a new feeling. In fact, the older we get, the more we begin to notice something that nobody tells us when we're young. Not every truth needs to be spoken aloud. And more importantly, some truths are sacred, and keeping them to yourself isn't hiding, it's honoring. Today, we're going to have a very real conversation, not about being silent out of fear, but about learning when to hold our truth like a treasure, not a weapon. This isn't about being secretive, it's about dignity, about boundaries, about peace. And if you've been carrying the weight of always having to explain yourself, explain your choices, your pain, your story, then this just might be the most freeing conversation you've had in a long time. So let's settle in, get comfortable. Maybe grab a warm drink or wrap yourself in your favorite sweater. This is your time. No need to perform, no need to prove anything. Just breathe. And let's begin. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to talk to your children about what's going on with your body lately? The aching hip, the medication you've been prescribed, the side effects that leave you drained? Maybe you just wanted to share how you've been feeling. Not to complain, just to be seen. And yet, before you're even halfway through, they're suddenly busy with their phones or changing the subject. It's not that they don't care, but your pain, your body, makes them uncomfortable. It reminds them of something they don't want to face, and so they shut it out. Not maliciously, just out of emotional fear. And that can be a lonely place to stand, can't it? But here's a truth worth holding on to. Your body is not a topic that needs justification. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how much you hurt, how often you visit the doctor, or how many pills you need to take just to make it through the day. The fact that you're here, still standing, still showing up, still trying, is more than enough. Sometimes we explain our pain not because we want attention, but because we want connection. We want someone to hear us and say, "I see you, I'm with you." But what happens more often than not is silence, or worse, dismissal. And that hurts more than the pain itself. So I'm here to tell you something important. You don't have to keep explaining. Not because your pain isn't real, but because your dignity is. You can carry your truth without broadcasting it. You can care for your body with quiet strength, not for validation, but for self-respect. There's power in silence, not the kind of silence that suppresses, the kind of silence that protects, that says, "I know what I'm going through, and that's enough." And when you stop explaining your pain, something surprising happens. You stop chasing empathy from those who are not equipped to give it, and you start offering that empathy to yourself. That's where peace begins. Now, maybe you've also felt that awkward pause after someone asks you, "So, are you seeing anyone these days?" Or they say it in a joking tone, as if being single at your age is something tragic, something to be fixed. Let me gently challenge that. Being alone is not a failure. It's not a disease, not a flaw, not something to apologize for. Sometimes, being alone is the most powerful choice you can make. After years of caregiving, raising kids, putting everyone else first, maybe now, for the first time, you've chosen to put yourself first. And that's not selfish, that's sacred. But it's hard, isn't it? Because society still whispers this idea that if you're not paired up, you must be lonely. As if companionship is the only way to prove you're worthy of love or happiness. Let me tell you something. Solitude is not emptiness. It's fullness. It's the quiet comfort of your own space. It's drinking tea without interruption. It's sleeping through the night without worry. It's thinking your own thoughts on your own time. And the truth is, you don't owe anyone an explanation for that. You don't have to tell people why you're not dating. You don't have to justify why you love living alone. If your heart is calm, that's your answer. Let it be enough. There's an image I love, the hermit in spiritual traditions. She's not hiding. She's not broken. She's chosen her own path, carved her own cave, and found peace in the quiet. That's not defeat. That's clarity. You are not waiting for someone to come complete you. You are not missing a half. You are already whole. And if people can't understand that, well, that says more about their discomfort than your choices. Sometimes, your solitude is your temple. And not everyone should be invited in. As we age, we gain the right to choose, not just how we live, but what we share and who we share it with. That's a privilege, and it's one worth protecting. So, if you've ever felt the pressure to explain why your life looks different now, quieter, simpler, more private, I hope this gives you permission to stop. You've earned this season. You've earned your boundaries. You've earned the right to speak less and live more. And speaking of pressure, let's talk about another kind of truth that quietly wears you down. The need to explain just how deeply you've been disappointed. You know what I mean. The betrayals, the promises broken, the people who said they'd be there and weren't. Maybe even the people you sacrificed for, who never once turned around to say thank you. It's tempting to bring that up, to tell the story again and again, hoping this time someone will understand. Hoping someone will say, that wasn't fair, you deserved better. But here's the thing, not everyone is capable of holding space for that kind of truth. And when we hand our deepest wounds to someone who can't or won't receive them, it's like opening a cut in the middle of a dust storm. Instead of healing, it gets infected. So you don't have to tell that story. You don't have to relive it just to prove it happened. The people who weren't there for you when you needed them, they're not going to show up now to suddenly make it right. And your healing doesn't depend on their apology. Instead of explaining the wound, start tending to it. Privately, quietly. As a gardener would care for soil that's been trampled. Clear the rocks, breathe new life into it. Maybe even write a letter to the person who hurt you. A letter you'll never send. Say everything you wish you could say. And then let it go. Keep it. Burn it. Cry over it. But don't explain it to people who won't understand. Because you don't need to be understood to be whole. You just need to be honest with yourself. There's dignity in that. There's strength in that. And from there, everything begins to change. Let's keep going. So now, you've stopped chasing empathy from those who can't give it. You've stopped trying to explain your solitude like it's something to fix. You've even started to recognize that not all wounds need to be spoken aloud to be healed. That in itself is a kind of liberation, isn't it? But here's where things can start to get tricky. Because just when you begin feeling peace in your new choices, in the space you've made for yourself, another quiet habit tends to sneak in through the back door. You start apologizing for the way you live, not in big, dramatic ways, but in those small, subtle phrases that slip out of your mouth before you even notice. Sorry, I can't. Sorry, I'm just not up for that. Sorry for saying no. Sound familiar? You've been trained, for decades, to be available, agreeable, helpful, to put yourself last. And when you finally begin living differently, when you finally stop saying yes out of guilt and start saying no out of self-respect, it can feel unfamiliar, even scary. But here's the truth that might set you free. You don't need to apologize for living the way you choose. You've lived long enough to know what drains you, what lifts you, what matters, and what doesn't. So why apologize for protecting your energy? There is nothing wrong with choosing quiet instead of chaos. There is nothing wrong with deciding not to attend every event, not to entertain every guest, not to solve every family problem. That's not selfish. That's wise. The people who love you will adjust. The ones who don't were never really listening to begin with. And the thing is, the guilt you feel, it's not yours. It was given to you. wrapped in duty, tied with expectations. But you don't have to carry it anymore. You've already given enough. You've already proven enough. Now is the time to stop asking for permission to rest. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, let it. Because when a woman stops apologizing for putting herself first, it shakes the ground beneath those who relied on her silence. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I'm sorry for doing what's right for you," pause. Replace it with something stronger, something more honest. Try saying, "Thanks for understanding. I won't be able to. I've made other plans for myself." No guilt, no apology, just boundaries. And speaking of boundaries, that brings us to something even deeper. A truth that many of us understand too late. You don't have to justify the lines you draw. Think of your life as a house, a home you've built with your hands, your time, your sacrifice. Every room holds memories. Every wall has meaning. Now imagine that house with no doors. Anyone can walk in, stay as long as they like, take what they want, leave their mess behind. No one knocks, no one asks. They just assume it's their right to be there. How long would you last in a house like that? That's what life feels like when you've never been taught to set boundaries. Exhausting, disorienting, overwhelming. But now you're starting to close the door. Kindly, clearly, calmly. You're putting up signs that say, "Please knock. No entry without invitation. Respect this space." And some people won't like it. Not because your boundaries are wrong, but because they benefited from your lack of them. They'll say, "You've changed. You're not as generous as you used to be. Don't you care anymore?" They'll wrap guilt inside of love. They'll call their expectations needs and their convenience family. But you don't have to explain. You've spent years, maybe decades, saying yes to everything and everyone. Missing sleep, skipping meals, putting your needs second, third, last. And for what? So that people could be comfortable while you quietly faded in the background? Not anymore. Your body needs rest. Your mind needs space. Your spirit needs time to recover from a lifetime of being stretched thin. So when you say no, say it without a paragraph of explanation. Say it without guilt, without permission. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And if someone truly loves you, they'll understand that. Maybe not right away, but eventually. And if they don't, that's their journey, not yours. Let's go even deeper now, because after you've drawn those lines, after you've stopped apologizing, after you've begun to honor your own limits, there's still one shadow that lingers in the back of many minds. And it's this, the fear of growing old. It's a quiet fear. Not something we shout from the rooftops, but it's there, in the way we talk to ourselves in the mirror, in the way we hesitate to try something new, in the way we downplay our dreams with phrases like, "It's too late for me now." But listen to me carefully. It's not too late. Not to feel, not to grow, not to change, not to live. Aging is not a decline. It's a return. A returning to yourself after years of being scattered into jobs, relationships, children, roles. Now you are here, with more clarity, more wisdom, more choice than ever before. And yes, the body changes, the face changes, but that does not mean you fade. You are not a candle burning out. You are the flame that remains. So don't confess your fear of growing old to people who won't know what to do with it. They will respond with pity, or worse, with silence. And that only makes the fear grow. Instead, face that fear like an old friend. Sit with it. Talk to it. Ask it where it came from, what it wants. Then thank it for trying to protect you, and let it go. Because the truth is, fear doesn't age you. Hiding from life does. And you, my friend, were not born to shrink. You were born to rise, even now, especially now. So wear what makes you feel alive. Say what's been sitting in your chest for years. Take the class. Book the trip. Speak your mind. Protect your peace. You have nothing to prove, no one to impress. You don't need to make yourself smaller so others feel bigger. You don't need to quiet your joy to fit someone else's comfort. Your age is not a limit. It's a badge of honor. And you have every right, every single right, to live without fear, without guilt, and without apology. You've stopped chasing validation. You've faced fear with grace. You've begun drawing the lines that protect your spirit. And as you learn to say no without flinching, something inside you begins to realign. But here's what might surprise you. That silence, that space you fought so hard to reclaim, it doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels like loss. When you finally start living life on your own terms, some people will drift away. Others may say you've changed. You're not as fun, not as available, not who you used to be. But the truth is, they're just not used to your freedom. And that's okay. You weren't meant to carry everyone's comfort. You weren't built to bend in every direction. You weren't born to be a servant to expectations. So don't be afraid of the silence that follows your boundaries. That's not emptiness. That's clarity. And it's in that clarity that something else becomes clear too. Something that hurts in its own quiet way. You start to notice that the things you've accomplished, the sacrifices you've made, the work you've put in, often go unseen. And so maybe you've tried to explain it. Maybe you've sat with someone and said, "You know, I used to do all of this." Or, "I gave up so much for you." Or, "You don't know how hard it was for me back then." And still, their eyes glaze over. Their attention drifts. It's not fair. But here's another truth to keep close to your heart. You don't need to talk about your accomplishments unless someone asks. I know, that might sound harsh, but it's actually one of the most liberating things you'll ever realize. Because if you need to convince someone of your worth, you've already handed them a kind of power they didn't earn. Your accomplishments, the kids you raised, the jobs you worked, the marriages you endured, the times you kept going when others would have quit, those things are not up for negotiation. They are roots, and roots don't need to be displayed. They're what hold you up when everything else falls away. You don't have to lay out your resume in conversation. You don't have to list your good deeds just to be respected. And if someone requires that of you, their respect isn't worth having. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are, what you've done, and what it cost you, without needing the world to clap for it. So instead of retelling your story to ears that won't hear it, try something different. Celebrate your wins in solitude. Light a candle for the you that made it through. Write down something you're proud of and put it somewhere you'll see it. Not for approval, just for remembrance. You have lived a life worth honoring, but not everyone deserves access to that story. Protect it. Hold it close. Let it feed you from the inside out. Because the most powerful kind of respect is the kind you don't have to ask for. It radiates in your posture, your peace, your presence. And when people sense that, they don't need a list. They already know. Now there's one final truth. And it may be the hardest of all to live by. Not because it's complex, but because it's so quiet, so simple, that we almost always overlook it. You don't need to explain why you now choose peace. Let me say that again, just in case your heart needed to hear it one more time. You don't need to explain why you now choose peace. You don't have to soften it. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to say things like, "I'm not avoiding anyone, I just need rest," or "It's not that I don't care, I just need space." You don't need disclaimers. You don't need excuses. You need peace, and that is reason enough. But I know, peace is unfamiliar to some, especially when you've spent decades serving, fixing, giving, pleasing. Peace almost feels wrong, like you've forgotten something, like you're being selfish. That's not selfishness. That's recovery. You're recovering from a lifetime of overextending. And the culture you grew up in, especially as a woman, likely told you that being a good person meant being endlessly available. That rest was laziness. That quiet was suspicious. that boundaries were rude. But you've reached a point in life where those old rules no longer apply. And guess what? They never really served you to begin with. So now, when you choose to step away, do it quietly. When you choose not to respond right away, do it calmly. When you choose peace over performance, do it without shame. You don't have to broadcast your transformation, you just have to live it. Let people think what they want. Let them assume. Let them talk. Because your life no longer belongs to everyone's opinions. It belongs to you. And if someone doesn't understand your calm, that's okay. Not everything has to be understood to be honored. After everything you've lived through, the heartbreak, the exhaustion, the sacrifice, you deserve a chapter that feels like you. One that isn't crowded by guilt, one that isn't written by obligation, one that starts with a deep breath and ends with a full heart. So if today you feel the pull to explain yourself, to defend your decisions, to justify your stillness, I want you to remember this. You don't need to explain peace. You just need to protect it. Because peace is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of self-respect. And that's not something you wait for. It's something you choose. So choose it now. Choose it boldly. Choose it without a single extra word. And if someone says you've changed, smile. That's the point. Here's what I hope you walk away with today. You don't have to talk about your body if people can't hear you with compassion. You don't have to explain your solitude. You don't have to unpack your disappointments. You don't have to apologize for living differently. You don't have to share your plans with those who won't support them. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You don't have to confess your fear of aging. You don't have to defend your accomplishments. And most of all, you don't have to explain your peace. You've earned the right to live softly, freely, and on your own terms. So if this message spoke to something deep in you, I invite you to let me know in the comments with the words, "My silence is power." Not as a trend, not as a line, but as a declaration that you are no longer here to perform. You are here to live, to breathe, to rest, to grow in peace. If this video gave you something to think about, feel free to like it and subscribe to this channel, Strong Elderly Life, where we speak truth to those who are done with half-truths. This space exists for people like you, people who aren't just growing older, but growing deeper. And if there's someone in your life who needs this message, someone strong, tired, and finally ready to stop asking for permission, share this with them. Even if it makes them uncomfortable, especially if it does. Because sometimes one honest conversation can change the way we live the rest of our life. Here's to your next chapter, your silent strength, and your well-earned peace. You've already carried so much. Now it's time to live light and live free.